Imagine you were planning a kidnapping. Not some desperate, impulsive grab in a parking lot, a real one. A calculated, multi-week operation targeting one specific woman in one specific house in the Arizona desert. Think about what you would need to know. You would need the layout, every room, every hallway, every door that sticks, and every door that swings open easy. You would need the cameras, not just where they are mounted, but whether they actually record. Because here is something most people do not realize. A Nest camera without a paid subscription is a prop. It looks like security, it acts like security, but it is not recording to the cloud. It is a plastic eye with no memory. And the only people who would know that about Nancy Guthrie's cameras are the people who spent time in that house. The people who watched her struggle with the settings. The people who knew she never paid for the plan. You would need her schedule. When she eats, when she sleeps, when her phone charges on the nightstand and her pacemaker syncs its nightly data. You would need the gate at the front of the property. Not just how it locks, but whether it locks at all. You would need the neighborhood. How dark it gets after midnight. How far apart the houses sit. How long it takes for a neighbor to notice something wrong. You would need all of this, down to the minute, down to the inch. Now here is my question. How long would it take you to learn all of that from the outside? Weeks? Months? You would need multiple scouting visits. You would need to test the cameras. You would need to study the gate. You would need to watch her patterns from a distance and hope you are not spotted. Or you could already know it, all of it, because you have been walking through that front door for 20 years. His name is Tommaso Cioni, and I need you to sit with what I am about to show you. On Christmas Day 2025, the Guthrie family posted a photo on Facebook. Matching pajamas, big smiles. Tomaso holding a black dog. Nancy standing right next to him. Her caption said, "Merry Christmas, sweet ones." That photo was taken 5 weeks before she vanished. 5 weeks before someone disconnected her doorbell camera at 1:47 a.m., spent 41 minutes inside her home, and removed her so completely that 400 investigators with helicopters and search dogs and FBI resources have not found a single trace of her in 25 days. Tommaso Cioni is 50 years old. Born in Tuscany, Italy. Moved to Arizona in 2006. Married Anni Guthrie, Nancy's eldest daughter, that same year. They have one son. He teaches 6th grade science and AP biology at a charter school called Basis Oro Valley. He plays bass in a local band. He writes poetry. He studies lizards. He makes homemade pasta. His wife called him a great manifester who writes poetry with his lifestyle. None of that matters. What matters is what he did on January 31st, 2026, and what he has not done since. Let me break the night down, because the details are where this case falls apart. Nancy had dinner at Anni and Tommaso's house. Normal Friday evening. Games after dinner. At approximately 9:30 to 9:50 p.m., Tomaso drove Nancy home. The sheriff confirmed this to the New York Times. Tomaso walked her to the door. He says he confirmed she was safely inside. Then he drove back to his own house. 4 miles, 10 minutes on empty desert roads. Stop here. I want you to think about what happened at that door. Tomaso is standing on Nancy's porch at 9:50 p.m. The Nest camera is right there. The security gate is right there. He has seen both of them 1,000 times. He says goodnight. He walks back to his car. He drives home. 3 hours and 57 minutes later, at 1:47 a.m., that same Nest camera goes dead. Not a software glitch, not a power outage. Someone physically disabled it. Someone who knew exactly where it was. Someone who walked directly to it without searching, without hesitating, without scanning the porch like a stranger would. Body language experts who reviewed the FBI footage used a specific term for how the suspect moved through that space. They called it ownership behavior. The suspect reaches for the camera the way you reach for a light switch in your own house. Muscle memory, no thought required. That is not a stranger's movement. That is 20 years of Friday night dinners encoded into a body. Now ask yourself, has anyone publicly confirmed where Tommaso Cioni was between 10 p.m. and 1:47 a.m.? They have not. If they have not told us. And a gap that remains open after 25 days is not an alibi. It is a window. A window wide enough to drive home, wait for the neighborhood to go silent, change clothes, drive back, park somewhere outside camera range, walk to a house you know better than anyone on earth, disable a camera you have looked at every week for 2 decades, enter through a gate you may have left accessible 4 hours earlier, and be back in your own bed before sunrise. I am not saying that is what happened. I am saying nobody has proven it did not happen. And in a case where every other detail points inward, that gap matters. Let me talk about the 41 minutes, because this is the detail that should have ended the stranger theory on day 1. The camera went down at 1:47 a.m. Nancy's pacemaker lost its Bluetooth connection to her phone at 2:28 a.m. That means someone was inside that house for 41 minutes. Let me put that number in context for you. Professional burglars, people who break into homes for a living, operate on 5-minute windows. Get in, get what you came for, get out. Every additional minute inside a target location increases the risk of discovery exponentially. 10 minutes is sloppy. 15 is reckless. 20 minutes, and you are no longer committing a property crime. You are doing something else. Something that requires time. Something personal. 41 minutes is not a burglary. It is not a quick grab. It is someone who is comfortable. Someone who knows this house so well that spending 41 minutes inside it at 2 a.m. does not feel dangerous to them. Because it is not unfamiliar territory. It is a place they have been 100 times before. A place where they know which floorboards creak and which doors are silent. A place where they know the bedroom is at the end of the hall, and the medication is on the kitchen counter, and the phone charges on the nightstand. Former homicide detective Ted Williams reviewed this timeline publicly. He said 41 minutes indicates the individuals involved possessed detailed knowledge of the property. They understood the layout. They were comfortable with the security. They operated with confidence that does not exist among strangers. There are only 2 ways to acquire that confidence: extensive surveillance over weeks or months, or personal access gained through years of legitimate visits. One of those explanations requires a sophisticated criminal operation. The other requires a son-in-law. Let me stay on those 41 minutes because I am not done with them. The sheriff called in homicide investigators, not as backup, not as a precaution, publicly, deliberately. He told reporters that he rarely calls out homicide in missing person cases. Rarely. That word carries weight when a sheriff with decades of experience says it on camera. He said there is something that is not right here. That is not a standard update. That is a man telling you that what he is seeing inside that house does not match the story the ransom notes are trying to sell. Why would a sheriff make that call before a body is found? Because the evidence inside Nancy's home told him that whoever did this was not operating like a kidnapper. They were operating like something else. The medication left behind, the camera knowledge, the 41 minutes of calm, unhurried presence in the middle of the night. None of it matched a ransom operation. All of it matched someone who knew the house, knew the woman, and had a plan that did not include keeping her alive long enough to collect a payment. Now let me tell you about his profession. Not because a job title makes someone guilty, but because this particular job title gives a person a very specific set of knowledge that happens to be exactly what you would need to commit this crime and avoid getting caught. Tomaso teaches AP Biology, Advanced Placement, college-level molecular biology, genetics, cellular structure, biochemistry. His students learn about DNA replication, protein synthesis, genetic inheritance. They learn about PCR amplification, the same technique forensic labs use to process crime scene DNA. They learn about gel electrophoresis, the same method that creates the genetic profiles entered into CODIS. The man standing in front of that classroom has a deeper working knowledge of forensic biology than almost anyone you will ever meet outside of a crime lab. Now look at the gloves. The suspect on Nancy's porch was wearing black nitrile gloves. Not leather, not latex. Nitrile. The exact same gloves found in every biology classroom in America. Tomaso puts on nitrile gloves every working day of his life. He teaches students how to handle specimens without contaminating them. He knows how DNA transfers between surfaces. He knows what a forensic technician looks for. He knows what they miss. But here is what most people do not know about nitrile gloves. They are not perfect. They are rated for chemical resistance, not forensic evidence prevention. Micro tears form during physical exertion, especially around the fingers. Sweat builds inside the glove within minutes. If you are wearing nitrile gloves while physically handling an 84-year-old woman, controlling her, carrying her, loading her into a vehicle, perspiration breaches the material. A biology teacher would know this, which means a biology teacher would also know to dispose of the gloves immediately after the operation. Not at the house, miles away, in a field near a roadside where nobody would look until it was too late. Someone found one anyway, 2 miles from Nancy's home. DNA from an unknown male inside it. Not in CODIS, no criminal record. Tommaso Cioni has no criminal record. His DNA is not in CODIS. If that glove was his, the result would look exactly the way it looks. Unknown. No match. Now, look at the rest of the gear and ask yourself a question that nobody in the mainstream media has asked properly. Why was it so bad? $20 Ozark Trail backpack from Walmart with reflective strips that glow under infrared like a beacon. Cheap ski mask. A belly band holster strapped over a thick jacket in the wrong position between the legs. Firearms expert John Correa said no one with even a day of tactical training would wear a holster like that. The total cost of everything the suspect was wearing is probably $70. People defending Tomaso love this. They say he is too smart to look that stupid. An AP biology teacher would never show up to a kidnapping dressed like he bought his crime kit in the clearance aisle. Stop and think about that argument for a second. Really think about it, because it sounds logical until you flip it. If you are an intelligent person planning a crime you cannot be connected to, what is the most important thing? Not the DNA, not the fingerprints, the profile. The behavioral template the FBI builds to describe who they are looking for. If the suspect shows up in professional gear, night vision, signal jammer, suppressed weapon, form-fitting clothes, the profilers write a very specific description. Educated, disciplined, trained. That profile narrows fast, and it points at people like science teachers. But if you deliberately assemble the worst possible kit, the cheapest backpack, the wrong holster, the reflective straps you should have cut off, you build a character. The FBI profilers sit down and describe a disorganized, low-income, impulsive offender. Someone who has never planned anything in their life, and they stop looking at the composed, methodical educator 4 miles away. That is not stupidity. That is a performance. And 25 days later, no one in law enforcement has named Tommaso Cioni as a suspect. The performance is working. There is one more detail about those cameras that keeps me up at night. Nancy did not have active cloud subscriptions on her Nest system. The cameras could detect motion and send alerts to her phone, but they were not recording continuous footage. The FBI had to partner with Google to recover residual data from back-end servers. What we have seen exists only because of forensic data recovery, not because the cameras were doing their job. Who would know that? Who would know that Nancy's cameras were props? Not a stranger. A stranger sees a Nest doorbell and assumes it is live. A stranger assumes they are being watched. The only people who would know those cameras were decorative are the people who spent time in that house. The people who helped her with technology. The people who saw the camera every week and knew she never paid for the service. And the door. Nancy's front property has a wrought iron security gate, standard for Tucson desert homes. In the FBI footage, the suspect passes through without forcing anything open. No prying, no tool marks, no kicking. He enters as if the path has been cleared. Either Nancy left her gate unlocked, possible for an 84-year-old woman who has felt safe in the same neighborhood for 41 years, or someone made sure it would be open. Someone who was at that exact gate 4 hours earlier, at 9:50 p.m., saying goodnight, making sure Mom got inside safe, and leaving the latch undone for whoever was coming back at 1:47 a.m. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable. What was left behind? Nancy's essential medications were sitting on the kitchen counter, visible, accessible, untouched. The sheriff confirmed these were not supplements or vitamins. They managed serious medical conditions that could become life-threatening without consistent treatment. Missing a single day could trigger complications. Missing multiple days could kill her. If you kidnap someone for ransom, you take their medication. You have to. A dead hostage is worth nothing. You need her alive for the negotiation. You need her stable. You need her manageable. Taking the medication is so obvious, so basic, so fundamentally necessary to a successful ransom operation that leaving it behind tells you one of two things. Either the kidnapper was so incompetent that they did not understand an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker needs her pills, or they left the medication on purpose. Because keeping Nancy alive long enough to collect a ransom was never the actual plan. Think about that. 41 minutes inside the house. That is more than enough time to see the medication on the counter, to read the labels, to throw the bottles in the backpack. 41 minutes, and they did not take 10 seconds to grab the pills that would keep their hostage alive. That is not a mistake. That is a decision. And that decision tells you more about the motive than any ransom note ever could. Speaking of ransom, let me dismantle that narrative right now. The ransom demanded $6 million in Bitcoin. Why 6? Not 5, not 10, not a round number that a stranger would throw out. 6 million. That number is surgical. It says, I know what Savannah Guthrie earns. I know what she has liquid. I know the difference between her net worth and her accessible cash. A stranger demands 50 million because strangers dream big and negotiate down. An insider lands on 6 because an insider has been sitting at the same dinner table for 20 years listening to conversations about money. The Bitcoin wallet attached to the ransom has been dead since the moment it was created. The FBI sent a small amount as a trap, a few $100s. The moment someone accesses that wallet, their device, their IP address, their physical location are captured. Nobody has touched it. Zero activity. Ask yourself what that means. If this was really about money, someone would have accessed the wallet by now. Professional criminals know how to use Bitcoin mixers, layered transactions, anonymous access points. They would have moved the money within hours, but this wallet is frozen. Either the kidnapper knows it is a trap and is too paralyzed to act, or the ransom was never meant to be collected. It was a prop, a narrative device, something to make investigators chase a financial motive, while the real motive sits 4 miles away in a house the FBI keeps visiting. 5 times. Maybe 6. Federal agents have been to Anni and Tommaso's home more than any other location in this investigation. Not Nancy's house. Not the field where the glove was found. The home of the last person to see Nancy alive. Fox News cameras captured agents leaving with a brown paper bag. In forensic procedure, paper bags serve one purpose: preserving biological evidence. DNA, sweat, skin cells, blood. You use paper instead of plastic because plastic traps moisture and degrades genetic material. Whatever was in that bag, the FBI believed it contained something biological that needed a lab. Anni's vehicle was towed and impounded. Their septic tank was examined. And if you are wondering why investigators look at septic systems, it is because they capture biological material flushed from a residence. If someone cleaned up evidence and flushed it, traces survive in the tank. Security cameras were removed from the property. Neighbors were interviewed repeatedly, with agents asking specifically about Anni and Tomaso, their routines, their behavior, when they come and go, what kind of car they drive, whether that car was in the driveway at 2 a.m. on February 1st. You do not do that if you have cleared someone. You do that if you are building something. The sheriff cleared the family on February 16th. He said they are victims. He said suggesting otherwise is cruel. I hear that. But let me ask you something. If you were running an investigation and you wanted a suspect to relax, to stop being careful, to make a phone call they have been afraid to make or check a Bitcoin wallet they have been afraid to touch, what would you tell the cameras? You would say the family is cleared. You would say they are victims. You would take the pressure off publicly so the pressure can build privately. Clearing someone is sometimes the end of suspicion, and sometimes it is the first move in a trap. Now let me show you something that has gotten almost no mainstream attention. In May 2025, 8 months before the kidnapping, Tomaso signed a durable power of attorney giving Anni control over his financial and property affairs. Legal experts say this is routine for real estate transactions. Maybe. But the timing asks a question that routine paperwork does not answer. If you are planning something that might result in your arrest, the first thing you do is make sure your assets do not disappear with you. You transfer control to your spouse. You make sure the house stays in the family. You make sure your son is protected financially. You sign the document 8 months early so that when the event happens, the paperwork looks old and ordinary and no one thinks twice about it. Is that what happened? I do not know. But the document exists, the date exists, and the kidnapping exists. And all three are connected to the same man. In February 2024, 12 months before the kidnapping, Nancy Guthrie published a memoir called Mostly What God Does. In that book, she tells a story from childhood. She and Anni used to play a game with their cousin Terry. They called it mock kidnapping. Cousin Terry would wake the girls up in the middle of the night, drive them from Tucson to Phoenix, and the girls would call Nancy from a payphone. "Mom, Cousin Terry kidnapped us," and Nancy would play along. An innocent childhood memory, a game. But it means that a kidnapping template existed in this family's history. A scenario where someone is taken in the middle of the night from Tucson. Published in a best-selling book. Available to anyone in the family, including a son-in-law who reads and writes poetry for fun. Let me point out one more timing detail that no one has adequately explained. Nancy was taken on the exact weekend Savannah was scheduled to travel internationally for NBC's coverage of the 2026 Winter Olympics. Olympic assignments are determined months in advance. Travel schedules are locked, hotels are booked, production crews are coordinated across time zones. If you wanted to target Nancy during a window when her most powerful family member would be on the other side of the planet, distracted, unreachable, unable to mobilize a response for hours, you would pick that weekend. Who would know Savannah's Olympic schedule? Not a stranger in a Walmart parking lot. A family member. Someone who heard about the trip at dinner. Someone who knew that the weekend of February 1st, Nancy would be more isolated than usual because her famous daughter would be halfway around the world. And while Nancy has been missing, something else has happened that nobody wants to talk about. The Today Show has surged in the ratings. Savannah's absence from the anchor desk, her emotional Instagram posts, the daily media cycle around this case, all of it has generated more attention for Savannah and for NBC than anything in recent memory. Sources told News Nation she may be considering a permanent exit from the show. If she leaves, her next deal, streaming contract, documentary series, book, will be worth more than anything she has ever been offered. The tragedy has made her more valuable. I am not saying anyone kidnapped Nancy for ratings. That would be insane. But I am pointing out that the financial ecosystem around this family is more complex than one ransom number. Savannah's net worth is $40 million. Her annual salary is approximately $8 million. Tomaso teaches biology at a charter school. Anni works at a university poetry center. The financial gradient in this family is a cliff, and cliffs create pressure. Pressure that builds across 20 years of family dinners where one person flies in from Manhattan and another person drives home to grade homework. That is not a motive. That is the soil in which motive grows. And nobody has examined that soil closely enough. And then there is the silence, the single most damning piece of evidence that is not evidence at all. Reporter Brian Enton told Megyn Kelly on February 9th that Tomaso had not been seen publicly in almost a week. Big beard, very recognizable. Gone. Last spotted outside the house with Anni, sitting in a car together. After that, nothing. Let me show you what the rest of the family has done. Savannah has posted multiple emotional videos begging for help. She offered $1 million reward. She cried on camera. She said every hour has been agony. Cameron spoke directly to the kidnapper on video. Anni has cooperated fully with investigators. Every single member of this family has put their face in front of a camera and screamed into the void for help. Except one. Tommaso Cioni has not posted a statement. He has not appeared in a video. He has not spoken to a journalist. He has not stood beside his wife while she begged the world to find her mother. The man who drove Nancy home on the last night she was seen alive has been invisible for the better part of a month. Why? If your mother-in-law is missing and the entire country is looking for her and your wife is falling apart on Instagram, what do? You talk. You beg. You go on every camera you can find and say, "I love that woman and I want her found." That is what innocent people do. They cannot help themselves. The grief is too big to contain. It spills out of them whether they want it to or not. Silence is a choice. And it is the choice the guilty people make when their lawyer tells them that every word is a potential exhibit at trial. Here is what I believe is coming. The DNA will be processed. The private lab in Florida is working on separating the mixed biological profile found inside Nancy's home. The glove DNA may resolve faster. It appears to be a cleaner sample. When those profiles are complete, they will be run through genealogy databases. The same technology that caught the Golden State Killer. The same method that identified Brian Kohberger in the Idaho murders. Even if the suspect has never submitted DNA to a consumer service, a distant relative might have. And from that partial match, investigators build family trees, branch by branch, name by name, until the branches point at one person. 2 DNA profiles means 2 family trees, 2 chances for a relative to be in a database. The probability that both suspects in a 2-person operation have 0 family members in any public genealogy database is almost non-existent. The math is a death sentence for whoever did this. It is only a matter of time. And the cell towers are coming too. The FBI has tower dumps from February 1st, from the earlier porch visit, possibly from January 11th and January 23rd. Every date is a list of every phone that pinged in the area. The FBI is looking for the number that shows up on multiple dates. The phone that was near the backward walker's house on January 23rd and near Nancy's house on February 1st. If that phone belongs to Tomaso or anyone in his circle, there is no defense on earth that survives it. In the next video, I am going to show you the other half of this equation, because 2 DNA profiles means 2 people. And if Tomaso is the architect, the man who planned this, who provided the blueprint, who knew the cameras and the gate and the medication and the schedule, then someone else was the operative. Someone who walked through that door at 1:47 a.m. Someone with the criminal experience to enter a home, confront an elderly woman, and remove her without leaving a usable trace. Someone who lives minutes from Nancy's house. Someone whose physical description matches the FBI's suspect profile. Someone who has been playing in a band with Tommaso Cioni for 19 years. That video is next. And when you see who the drummer is, you are going to understand why this case is about to break wide open.